What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and I know it has been a long time since I last made a video, a little over 2 months now, but NFL season is in full swing, and I wanted to give my take on a very big topic in the league right now, which is the quarterback situation in Carolina with Bryce Young, because it's looking like the Bryce Young era in Carolina is going to be over very, very quick. And so when you look at what the Panthers have done this season, they opened the season in New Orleans, and Bryce Young throws 2 interceptions and no touchdowns, and Carolina gets absolutely stomped by the Saints. And if you go back and watch this game and watch the interceptions that Bryce Young threw, both of the throws were very inaccurate, and he really just didn't have a lot of time in the pocket at all, and he was taking a lot of sacks. And so it's looking like the Saints are going to be a very good team this year. I thought they were going to win that game in Carolina anyway, but I didn't think it would be that bad. But then you fast forward to week 2, and then the Chargers come to town, who had just beaten the Raiders, and it's even worse than it was in week 1 because Bryce Young throws for 84 yards, 1 interception. And through the first 2 games of the season, Bryce Young has 245 passing yards, which is last in the league among starting quarterbacks. Obviously, no touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, and he is barely completing over half of his passes at a 55% completion percentage, and his QBR is 9.1. Those are his stats through 2 games, and the result of all those stats has caused the Panthers to bench him for veteran quarterback Andy Dalton. And when you just look at where all of this began for the Carolina Panthers, before the 2023 NFL Draft, they traded up with the Chicago Bears to the number 1 pick. They traded veteran wide receiver DJ Moore to the Chicago Bears, got the number 1 pick, and took Bryce Young. And not only did they take Bryce Young, but they took Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. And I'll get to that point a little bit later in the video. But when you look at what Bryce Young did in his rookie year, the Panthers only won 1 game, and he threw 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And since he has been in the league, he has had the worst touchdown to interception ratio among quarterbacks in the NFL. And the worst thing about all of it was that the Panthers could not even get the number 1 pick because they traded whatever draft pick they had to Chicago as a part of the DJ Moore trade. And that is why the Bears were able to take both Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze in the first round. And so the Panthers didn't even have a first-round pick last year, which means they couldn't even get Bryce Young any help in the offseason. And when you look at how Young's career has started through these first almost 20 games, I'm just not seeing how he can be a good NFL quarterback. And I'll get to the situation of the Panthers not having enough weapons later in the video, but I just want to start with the physical attributes of Bryce Young. We knew coming out of college that he is very, very short, and that's a problem in the NFL, especially when you're not going to have a good offensive line because you're going to a team like the Carolina Panthers, who are just a bad team and they have holes to fill everywhere, and obviously offensive line is one of them. Not only is he short, through watching him in the NFL, I don't think his arm talent is anything special, not that great, and then he's also not that mobile either. And I think that mobility aspect is a big part of why he's struggling in the league at his size, because when you look at quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, those are the 2 guys that come to mind. When Russell Wilson was in his prime, not only was he one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, but he was also one of the most mobile guys out there and knew how to maneuver the pocket, knew how to get out of trouble, and knew how to get out of sacks. Kyler Murray, outside of Lamar Jackson, I honestly think Kyler Murray is the most mobile quarterback in the league right now. Josh Allen is obviously a guy who's very mobile as well, but when I just look at pure shiftiness and speed, and look, you got to remember, Kyler Murray is an athlete. He was drafted by the A's and number 1 overall. He could have played baseball. So that guy knows how to run, and you see him through his first some odd years in the NFL. Even watch him on Sunday against the Rams, threw for almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and looked very, very good. And if he stays healthy this year, I don't know if the Cardinals are going to be a great team, but I know that Kyler Murray can put up a great season. And so I bring those guys up because Bryce Young is in a similar situation to where he's not big enough to play quarterback, so he has to have something physically that can set him apart from other guys, and he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have the throwing ability. He doesn't have the pocket presence really, because he looks kind of lost when he's out there playing. And yes, part of that is due to the personnel or lack thereof. He doesn't have the arm talent. He doesn't have the mobility, and then he just doesn't have that feel basically playing quarterback in the league. And you can tell right away when guys have a feel for playing QB in the league. And you look at what CJ Stroud did last year, and I guess this is a way to segue into that. He took the Houston Texans to the playoffs after being passed up on by the Panthers for the number 1 pick. And he looks like a guy who is going to be, if not already, a top 5 QB in the league right now. And the Panthers passed up on him and took Bryce Young and benched him for Andy Dalton. And I know the circumstances in Carolina aren't great, but when I look at what is going on with the Panthers and Bryce Young, I don't think putting Young on another team or surrounding him with better skill position players is really going to change anything, because this isn't college football where you can just stack up teams and then beat up on inferior teams. Everybody in the NFL is a professional. Everybody in the NFL is big. Everybody is tall. Most people are, at least tall, fast, strong, and Bryce Young isn't those things physically. So putting more weapons around him isn't going to change the fact that he's 5'9", 5'10", doesn't really throw the ball that well and can't really maneuver in the pocket. And another thing is, there's a blessing and a curse in sports to being the number 1 overall pick, because when you are picked first overall, you are going to a team that is usually very, very bad, and you are being picked at that position because they think that you can change the fortunes of that team, especially in the NFL. When you have the number 1 overall pick and you just have holes all around your team, it's most likely the case that you're going to draft a quarterback, because it all starts with the quarterback. Once you get the franchise quarterback, you can fill everything you need around him, because if you get the quarterback right, it's easier to get other stuff right. And more importantly, if you get the quarterback right, it gives you more room for error, especially if that quarterback is very, very good. You don't have to get every single other position right if you can get the quarterback right. And number 1 overall picks have to be able to overcome adverse circumstances in the NFL. You're not going to go to a team that has a bunch of fast wide receivers, fast running backs, great O-line, great defense. Now, there are obviously some exceptions, like Patrick Mahomes, who wasn't picked number 1 overall, but went to a team that had Andy Reid, a veteran quarterback to sit behind, Alex Smith, great defensive players at the time, like Justin Houston, those guys like that, and an emerging Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce was really coming into his own before Patrick Mahomes took over the starting job in Kansas City. And look, not everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows in the NFL. You can't expect a guy to go to a team and automatically blame it on the situation isn't great, he doesn't have any weapons. That's why they had the number 1 overall pick, because that's what the situation was going in, and Bryce Young is expected to at least be able to overcome some of that. And I think because of the deficiencies that he lacks physically, he's not going to be able to, no matter what the Panthers do around him. Now, I will say that Carolina did themselves no favors. They changed coach. They haven't had a consistent coach in over 2 years. They fired Frank Reich, and then they hired a new coach. And so David Tepper definitely seems like an impatient owner. Doesn't really seem like the guy that should be leading the charge in Carolina. So everything in Carolina is bad, but I just don't see Bryce Young as being somebody that you can build a franchise around and win, because he lacks the physical tools that it takes to be successful in the NFL. And so I just wanted to come out and make this video, because the Bryce Young situation it's definitely important, because the number 1 overall pick doesn't just get benched less than 20 games into a season unless he's injured. And so if the Panthers are already giving up on Bryce Young, then they've set their franchise back for a long time, because CJ Stroud is balling up in Houston, and he could possibly win a Super Bowl for the Texans. That's how good I think the Texans are, and how good I think CJ Stroud is and can be. I'm not sure if it'll be this year, but Houston is going to be winning a lot of football games, and Bryce Young in Carolina, it's looking like they're going to be split after this season. So let me know what you guys think about the Carolina Panthers benching Bryce Young in favor of Andy Dalton. Can Andy Dalton save the season in Carolina? What do you think the Panthers should do with Bryce Young in the offseason? Do they keep him and try and surround him with better weapons and see if it was maybe a personnel thing? Or do they just wipe the slate clean and move on? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, share, and find the rest of my content linked in the description.